Hello everyone!
I'm in beautiful Luxor. Today we leave the Nile Valley and go to the desert, where I'll show you the rarely visited, almost never filmed tombs of the New Kingdom. You've probably never seen them before. Among them, one recently discovered, still closed to visitors, and another opened just 2 months ago, which I will show you at the end of this episode, so stay with me. Our adventure starts in the deserted village of Qurnet Murai. Let's go! Our first tomb is TT40, one of a few we know for sure that was built during the reign of King Tutankhamun. The owner is Amenhotep, better known as Hui. Hui was the king's son of Kush, overseer of the southern countries, the viceroy of Nubia. In his time, Egypt was recovering from the troubled crisis times of Akhenaten's revolution. The unique paintings are an example of a break with the Amarna style, a return, though still inconsistent, to classical Egyptian art. Among them, the famous procession scene of Nubian officials portrays in great detail the southern neighbors of Egypt, representatives of this great African civilization. They come to Egypt as a gift to the ruler, most likely assigned to the royal court. In front of a group of bound captives, we probably see an important Nubian princess in an oxen-drawn chariot. Then 5 princesses dressed in Egyptian fashion. Their so-called Nubian wigs were popular in Egypt towards the end of the 18th dynasty. Among the kneeling Nubian nobles, Prince Hekanefer, the chief of Miam, the governor of Lower Nubia and at the same time the most important figure after Hui. Among the gifts for the pharaoh are gold, ivory, ebony, shields and a giraffe. The history of the Nubians, like no other nation, was inseparable from Egyptian. Almost from the beginning of the empire, they were part of Egyptian society. They lived and worked throughout Egypt, not only in the south, displaced as a result of wars inland or migrated for work. Discovered in 1829, the tomb in modern times served as a stable and a cellar for the today abandoned house above it. This was the fate of all the tombs in the village of Qurnet Murai. The tomb's plan is an inverted T letter, the classic pre-Amarna layout. Of course, like most Egyptian nobles' tombs, it hasn't been fully completed. During Hui's lifetime, the supplies of Nubian raw materials, especially gold, were crucial in the crisis-stricken Egypt, hence so many scenes depicting the entire process of delivering the goods to Egypt. An example, Hui accompanied by a scribe recording the loaded goods. Hui's mummy and funerary equipment have never been found. According to some scholars, he may have lost his office or even been exiled during Tutankhamun's lifetime, which would mean that he was never buried here. Because we know that the reaction to religious persecution in Akhenaten's time was terror against former Amarna officials. Was Hui among them? The tomb's condition is bad. Thanks to earlier documentation, we know that attempts to cut out fragments of decorated plaster took place only after 1960. Here's an example of such devastation. It's shocking that actually a few decades ago one could admire these beautiful scenes in their entirety. In the unfinished pillared room, we see the remains of black granite statues. The room features 4 pillars. Although the walls are not straight, it's assumed that each measures around 5.8 meters in length. Beneath us are underground shafts and galleries, some built in later periods, as this tomb, like many others here, was also reused. The King Tutankhamun, sitting on the throne under a canopy, his cartouches were scrapped off already in antiquity. Hui's tomb is a great example of transitional art. Disproportionately large heads, full lips, short receding chins show a slow return to the old canon, but the eyes are still large, bodies are devoid of musculature, the limbs are still elongated, although not as caricatured, and the bellies, thighs and bust area, as in the Amarna art, are emphasized not by muscles but they're rather plump. Another tomb in Qurnet Murai, TT 277, belongs to Ameneminet, the priest of the god Ptah Sokar from the great temple of Amenhotep III. This is a small, irregular room about 3.5 by 2 meters. The tomb dates back to the Ramessid period. The style of the paintings indicates the 20th or the end of the 19th dynasty. These were times of departure from the rigid canon in Egyptian art. The images are casual, the proportions abandoned, and the placement of figures is more chaotic. The style of the paintings reminds me those from the workers' tombs in Deir el-Medina. A boat with a sacred bark on the sacred lake of the temple of Amenhotep III, where the deceased served. Unusually, the boat was painted quite casually, surrounded by fish and lilac flowers. A procession of priests is moving towards the lake, pulling on slides the statues of the 18th dynasty great pharaoh Amenhotep III and his wife Tia, the mother of Akhenaten. The priest holding the feather fan is Ameneminet himself. The title of the deceased is Divine Father in the Temple of Amenhotep III. He was a priest of the largest mortuary temple in Thebes, which may have already fallen into ruin in his time, since already Ramesses III was using it as a source of building material. Here we see Ameneminet worshipping the pharaoh of the Middle Kingdom, Mentuhotep II. This pharaoh was worshipped as a guardian of the necropolis for 900 years. A unique depiction. 4 men are carrying Ameneminet's coffin. The funerary texts have been written not in hieroglyphs but in hieratic text, which is another unusual feature here. Among the mourners, a mysterious group of 4 strangely dressed women with quite puzzling poses. In the afterlife, the deceased priest is worshipping the god Sokar, as well as Osiris and Ra. And again, the great pharaoh Amenhotep III and Queen Tia with a crown of double feathers. Above them, a large bouquet of flowers. Above the scene of the adoration of Osiris and Mut, we see empty columns for hieroglyphs, but they've never been written. There are actually more unfinished decorations here. Color was applied to them, but there was no time to add contours before Ameneminet's burial.
There's also a very rare representation of the pyramid inside the tomb.
Such pyramids above the tombs were in fashion during the 20th dynasty. I presented them to you in Der el-Medina, link in the description, where soon I'll take you once more to show you the tombs closed for visitors, so don't forget to subscribe to get notified. Right next to Ameneminet's tomb in the same courtyard we have another small tomb from the 20th dynasty, TT 278. We know very little about it. It's not in good condition, but we know the name of its owner, Amenemhab. He was the herdsman of Amun-Ra, probably grazing the temple cattle. It's a typical middle-class family tomb. A popular for tombs of the 20th dynasty motif of tree goddess. Sycamore was regarded as a manifestation of Nut, or as in this case Hathor, known as the Lady of Sycamore. It was a sacred tree for the Egyptians, the only one of the useful size and sturdiness in Egypt, growing at the edge of the desert, so by the necropolises. The mountain from which emerges the cow Hathor, Lady of the West, symbolizes the Theban necropolis.
I don't know if you remember, but in the tombs of Der el-Medina, we also saw the cow. It's a primeval goddess. We can connect her with Hathor or later Isis, like the mother goddess.
Of course, Hathor was the patroness of the Western Thebes. I managed to enter the tight shaft where the dead were buried. We can see a few things left by the archaeologists. Until recently, access to the tomb was difficult, covered with debris and garbage, and the courtyard in front of it served as a latrine. A truly picturesque abandoned village. Qurnet Murai is a real ghost town. We are heading to the necropolis of Dra Abu el-Naga, about 3 kilometers northwest, to Roy's tomb, TG 255, with its beautifully preserved paintings, still featuring lively colors. Discovered in 1822, it includes one small chamber measuring 4 by 1.85 meters. And yes, it's so colorful.
Oh my gosh. It's very beautiful, but it's so tiny. I can stand prostrate, but the colors are perfectly preserved.
The paintings were applied on a thin layer of mortar, which fills the irregularities in the walls. The ceiling in the fashion of the New Kingdom is a colorful imitation of the hangings with which ancients dressed the arched cabins of the boats. Roy was a royal scribe in the estates of Amenemhab and of Amun. It's not determined whether he died during the reign of the last ruler of the 18th dynasty or later, but his tomb already shows the Ramessidic features. Frieze with 2 yellow columns of hieroglyphs with an emblem of Hathor and image of Anubis is very characteristic for the 19th dynasty. In my opinion, both the style of the paintings and the modest size of the tomb suggest that Roy died long after the death of his master, King Amenemhab. Interestingly, certain features of the tomb indicate that it was one of many contemporary tombs carved and decorated by professional funeral contractors even before Roy bought it. In such tombs, blank spaces were left for the names of the deceased and their families. As Roy had no offspring, some of the figures were signed with the names of his servants. Even one of the priests on the northern wall is signed with the name of Roy's servant, Amenemhab. If it's not one of the manufactured tombs, it was definitely meant for another high official. Roy's wife, Neptavi or Tavi, accompanies him. Like many Theban noblewomen, she held the title of the Chantress of Amun. We see her wearing a heavy long wig with a cone of ointment on top and a lotus flower on the front, a typical look of the Ramessid nobility. The robes are clearly tinted orange by the fragrant consecrated oil. Now the largest tomb of Dra Abu el-Naga, discovered only in 2018. It is 3,500 years old, has an area of 450 square meters and contains as many as 18 entrance gates. It belonged to Shedsu-Djehuty, the royal master of seals of the 18th dynasty. His name means God saves Djehuty. Djehuty is another name for the god Thoth. The pillars carved in the rock in front of the facade of the tombs are a characteristic feature of Theban burials from the Middle Kingdom, as there was once a necropolis of the 17th dynasty pharaohs here, when northern Egypt was still under the rule of the Hyksos. Beautifully preserved colors and paintings still resembling those from the Middle Kingdom. The tomb isn't open to the public. I was very lucky to be able to show it to you, although certainly not as thoroughly as I would like to. There are still ongoing archaeological works. I hope to be back here soon, with a ticket obviously. Another tomb carved in similar style, TT83, we can see it right now, became famous thanks to the English pioneer of Egyptology, Sir John Gardner Wilkinson. In 1820, he built an unusual house in this tomb that became a convenient base for archaeologists studying Thebes in the first half of the 19th century. Wilkinson conducted the first topographic surveys, mapped Thebes, numbered the tombs. We owe him the numbering of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings. He assigned numbers with the famous abbreviation KV to the 21 known tombs at the time. He also discovered to the world the burials at Deir el-Medina. In front of us, a newly opened tomb. After 22 years of excavations by Spanish archaeologists, it opened in February this year, 2023. We managed to film it 2 or 3 days after the official opening, so I had the honor of being one of the first visitors. Djehuty bore several titles during the reign of Hatshepsut: the overseer of the treasury, the overseer of the works of the artisans, the overseer of the cattle of Amun. He was responsible for decorating the temples, including Hatshepsut's famous obelisks. Above all, however, he was responsible for supervising the finances of the palace. We are in the courtyard of the tomb, roofed in 1909. It was when archaeologists secured and closed the tomb, open for hundreds of years. The tomb is very damaged. On the walls we can see how destructively it was affected by water, wind, salts and fire. Most of all, however, it was people who did the most damage. Already in the time of Thutmose, the names of Djehuty and his family were scrapped off, and of course the images and cartouches of Hatshepsut. We're heading to the tomb chapel. When renovation work began in 2002, the chapel was completely filled with rubble, almost to the ceiling. Here are statues of Djehuty with his parents. In the late period, around the 2nd century BC, the animal mummies were buried here, and in late antiquity, this tomb and several neighboring ones were joined together to form a complex of catacombs. Obviously, their walls were demolished for this purpose. And finally, the looters of the 19th and 20th centuries did the work of destruction. A deep shaft in the tomb chapel leads through another room and a second shaft to the burial chamber, 12 meters below ground level, very close to the water table. As you can see, although the tomb has been officially opened, there are still ongoing archaeological works. Obviously, I have many more tombs planned to show you, so we'll be back to Theban necropolis soon. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, please subscribe to my channel, like and comment. It means a lot to me, as it's hard for small channels like mine to break through on YouTube. You can also support me on Patreon, link in the description. To learn more about Egyptian history, I highly recommend another YouTube channel, History with Sai, especially my favorite series, Ancient Egypt Dynasty by Dynasty. Link in the description. Thanks for watching, and see you on another ancient site.